This one I considered reviewing for Halloween, but ended up not doing that. However, I recently saw Mike from Red Letter Media recommend it, so I reconsidered and decided I would give it a shot anyway. And I'm very glad I did, because I ended up liking this quite a bit. But what's it about? Well, it's about this young mom and her young son. And they've recently moved into this old and sort of creepy house in a fairly remote area. Sound familiar? Well, yeah. So far it's a pretty conventional horror movie setup. And soon enough, of course, some strange and creepy things start happening. Things that could potentially have something to do with this massive hole in the ground in the middle of the woods. And you know what? I liked this movie almost immediately. Because I even found this little intro sequence to be really effective. It's essentially just the title sequence, but it's super well shot and set the mood perfectly. I also immediately fell in love with the score as well. I mean, it's just really good. In fact, the sound design in this in general is really good. It just makes every scene that much more effective. And the creepy and unsettling stuff in this was actually pretty creepy and unsettling. It worked, it did its job, and well, the whole scenario this one deals with is kinda horrific actually. I'm not gonna get into spoilers, but yeah, the situation the mom's in is very disturbing. But one of the main things that made this one work as well as it did was the simplicity. Because this one is very simple, very straightforward, and it doesn't complicate things unnecessarily. It also gets right into it and doesn't mess around, it doesn't take ages to set things up. And you know, overall, it's just a very tightly paced movie. A movie that sticks to what works and doesn't have a ton of filler or needless fluff. If something's in the movie, it probably matters and needs to be in it. Now, one thing I was a bit worried about for a while there was the overall vagueness of the mechanics behind it all. The explanation for what was actually going on and why it was happening. But the movie delivered with that as well, and again, it kept it very simple. It didn't over-explain or try to make things any more complicated than they needed to be. It was more like just, here's what's going on, this is how it works, and alright, now you fill in the gaps. And it's nothing fancy, it's just pretty basic and straightforward, but it works. And I ended up liking this quite a bit, I don't really have many complaints. I would also say that this one definitely has the makings of a genuine cult classic. Mainly just because of how solid it is on all fronts and how effective it is as a horror movie. With that being said, there is one thing I would have personally done differently. I would have left out that very last sequence. I mean, I get what they were doing with it. It did serve a purpose and I do think it worked. It's not a bad way to wrap it up. However, I think ending the movie with the scene right before would have been even more effective. To me personally. But that's really neither here nor there, because overall I really enjoyed this. I think it's a really good, tight little horror movie that deserves to be seen by more people. Because compared to most horror these days, this one just did almost everything slightly better. Now with that being said, I don't want to give the impression like this is some sort of masterpiece. I don't think it is, mainly because, well, at the end of the day, I wouldn't call it very innovative. It doesn't really do anything we haven't seen before, it definitely uses a lot of familiar tropes. But it used them well and it did manage to surprise me a few times too, so there's that. But how about it? Would I recommend it? Well, if you like horror, definitely. Go check it out. And if you don't, you can probably skip it. Or don't, after all. I'm not your dad. But hey, what are your thoughts on this? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a thumbs up or sub to the channel, because that would be fantastic. And if you'd like, you can also support me on Patreon or PayPal through the links in the description. And as always, I appreciate you and thanks for watching.